Yo, welcome to another episode of the BJJ GOONS podcast. I'm your host, Tim the Mushmaster, and my co-host as always is
Nico Ball, no new Nico here.
And today we have a very special guest. We have the Kasai 170-pound champion and the 2019 No-Gi World Champion, Dante Leon. Welcome to the show, bro.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, what's up? Dang, when was the last time I actually got to see you? I think it was ADCC.
ADCC, yeah.
Okay.
So like 10 months.
10 months. Okay, we were all there at ADCC. It's been a while.
Yeah. Everybody's at ADCC.
Yeah. That experience was pretty dope because it was in the country. Like the first one I went to was in Finland, I think, and that was kind of. It was just like not a very good experience because that long ass flight and everything. But this year it was pretty lit. Like the production was awesome. Like it was a dope ass time.
Yeah, the production cost was crazy this year. I don't think we really had that before any ADCC, any other tournament really.
Yeah, they did a bang up job with that. I heard Vegas is going to be even more insane. They said they're going to have lasers and shit.
I hope so.
They had taiko drums like the last one.
Yeah, I felt like Pride. It was so good. And they had a DJ too. It was just incredible.
Yeah.
So
yeah. ADCC is a different tournament, man. There's a different energy for sure.
It's kind of like the Kumite from Bloodsport.
Oh, yeah. yeah.
Naturally, a little bit violent. So what have you been up to during quarantine?
Pretty much nothing really changed. I mean, I wasn't really teaching because there was a mandatory shutdown for a while. But now things are starting to get, more normal, given some social distancing guidelines and everything like that. Classes are back on at the gym, and I'm able to get back to kind of like normal, what was normal for me at the beginning of the year and what kind of my life is. But for about 3 months, it was pretty much just kind of training with a small group of people that I lived with. And that was pretty much it. Like jiu-jitsu kind of just took over. There were no classes to teach. There were no tournaments to kind of prepare for or anything. Or just kind of training jiu-jitsu and just living like a different lifestyle,
Yeah. So that means you were just kind of like secretly training the whole time, like with your training partners when like normal classes closed down?
Well, I live with two guys who are also instructors at the gym.
Oh.
They live with me, so we were able to just train kind of in the house or go somewhere where there were mats and train with just each other. I mean, we really didn't break any, maybe 1 or 2 rules about social distancing at the time and self-quarantine. I mean, we were pretty much just with each other 24/7, just whether we were training and then weights in the gym, in the garage at the house. So we were like lifting there. So the training atmosphere definitely changed, but we still kept up with like our normal training schedule and, kind of stayed ready and prepared for when tournaments were going to come back.
So you have a mat area in your house and
yeah.
What is your setup like? Because I'm trying to do the same thing. Like, what is the setup like?
So we just had it upstairs. We moved it back down to the basement, just to kind of get it out of the way because nobody wants to have a living room with like mats in it, but we just had it right in the living room area. So it was just kind of easy. And then the garage is where I've had my gym and I've had weights in there for so long. Me and all my housemates, that's where we like work out. And that's where I really prefer to work out because, you don't need to schedule a time to go there ever. You can just open the door and go and leave the shit where you want it. So it kind of worked out, working out in the garage was like normal. And then training, we just had to keep the group smaller and kind of adjust the training a little bit because you're not going to have a huge area, but there was only 3 of us. So it wasn't too bad.
Man, so you guys are rumbling in the crib. That's pretty dope. I got like a whole basement and I'm trying to do the same thing. So I'm going to ask you like more questions later on about like how to make it so I can put the pads on the walls so I don't put a hole in the drywall and stuff. So was this like did you have to do a training camp for your recent matches? Because like you've been pretty active. You're a pretty active competitor. You've had 2 really good matches lately. How was your training camp? Would you call it a training camp? Like I'm assuming you were just training with your crew, the guys that you live with.
Oh yeah, and I want to hop on that. Like, can you tell us, like, when did Flow Grappling hit you up, like, about competing? Was it a surprise or?
So I started to see. So the first competition I did back since the shutdown. So I fought like leap year, right? On February 29th this year. That was the last time I fought before the shutdown. And then I came back to compete May 30th. So I had a while off. And in the time, I came back honestly sooner than I expected with how things were looking. I didn't think that tournaments were going to come back so soon. Once I saw Fight to Win offering up events as early as May 15th, it was kind of, time to like kick it in gear a little bit as far as somewhat of a camp. But for my first one, I didn't really have a camp because I was just doing jiu-jitsu. You know, I didn't have anything scheduled to be getting ready for. I just kind of had to stay in shape and stay sharp the whole time because I didn't know when they were going to call, and that was definitely sooner than expected. But for my last fight, I had much more of a camp. Usually my team's not very big. I don't keep the room very crowded. I have most of the time between 3 and 5 guys on the mat with me. That's like kind of what I prefer to train in, and that's kind of the environment I prefer to train in, regardless of COVID or not. I mean, that really had nothing to do with it. I always try and mix in different training partners and things. It's just with COVID, you could only have whoever you had, and that's pretty much who you had to stick with. But definitely for the last fight with Gary, I definitely got a little more of a camp per se in because I was able to have some more people in the gym and have some more people on the mat. But I never keep my comp training classes super, super packed.
Nice. How would you, I'd say, critique your performances? Because you've had a fight with Johnny Tama, which is incredible. Like, I rewatched that sequence over and over again because I'm like, how did he, what did he, and like, I don't know, like that's like some like Sixth Sense type stuff you were doing. And your match with Gary Tonin was really dope, and like you were very aggressive. Like, how would you critique your performances, those two, since the shutdown ended?
I think against Johnny, I don't think I can say too much wrong about that. I think that was kind of how we want every match to go, is to go out there and get to your game right away and have it lead to a submission. Get out of there with no injuries, no bumps, no bruises, and you can get back in the gym the next day. So I think that was, as close as we can get to a textbook performance.
Mm-hmm.
Against Gary, I'd never expect something like that to happen with Gary. As much as I believe in myself, I don't expect to go out there and submit him in 2 minutes. I know the dangers that he possessed. I know how good he was. And on that night, he was really good too, man. He had a great performance. I believe I had a really good performance. I could have adjusted some things, but I don't look at them as things that are too major. I had a couple attacks that I might have been a little bit loose on. I might have sat back and a couple times that I should have went forward. But overall, I'm quite happy with that one as well.
Nice. Do you want an immediate rematch?
I mean, immediate, no. I think he needs to fight JT. I think he deserves the number one. I don't think at the end of the day it was a very close fight. I know there was nothing really decisive when you go by submission only rules to say one guy won over the other. There was nothing super decisive because he never really had me in a lot of danger. We both had each other in really like dangerous positions, like on the back. I even had his back with a choke, one-arm choke under the neck for a while, but it was never a position that was like a definitive submission catch. So we definitely had a really good fight. I'm sure we'll see each other again in the future. And, depending on what happens, it could be a while before I have to fight him again. If he goes up and beats JT and kind of solidifies that he's number one, then, I probably have to go through other guys, Wagner and JT to get back up to his spot.
Nice.
Do you study a lot of film, like of your opponents or like your previous match footage?
Yeah, I don't really. I watch myself a little bit. Sometimes I just watch myself for entertainment because it's funny. You know what I mean? When you see yourself doing stuff, and but I study a lot of film, a lot, quite a bit. All year round. all the time, a lot of different stuff. And now when we are doing these more like professional matches, like these professional jiu-jitsu events, you know, where you see most of them are no gi and they're like super fights, you know, what we all used to call super fights. They're just kind of events now and matches and things like this, like what you're seeing on Fight to Win. It gives people a really good opportunity to bring a great version of themselves to the event because they can study their opponent. You know, like with Gary and I'm sure there was like hours and hours of film being studied by both of us on each other. So it brought out a really good version of ourselves. And, you know, worked out to make our jiu-jitsu like go to the next level rather than us just meeting in a tournament and whatever happens. So I think it's really good. I think it's really good to study. And I think it's really good that these professional matches are here so we can bring out that side of the sport. We can bring out that side of the athlete.
Oh, really dope.
Like, let's go back a little bit because I've always remembered my first memories of you as a competitor when you were like a purple and brown belt. And I was like, who is that guy? Because he is wrestling like super intense. It's like, I love his style. Like he's trying to kill the other dude, like old school. Like I got to watch the old like VHS tapes from back in Brazil, like the Teta days, the Jacares. I'm like, this guy is a freaking killer, like the jiu-jitsu version of the Ultimate Warrior, like going at it. But what is your, like, when did you start training? Like, I don't have no idea, like, how old you are, but, like, when did you start training? Like, what is your earliest martial arts memory? Let's start there.
So earliest martial arts memory, I mean, would be my dad did martial arts all through his life, all the way up until he was mid-30s, like training and competing in a lot of different styles. So my earliest memories of martial arts are some of my earliest memories just kind of playing around with my dad. I didn't have any brothers or sisters. My dad would teach me a few things here or there, but everything was kind of a game. You know what I mean? Everything was kind of, oh, show me your boxing. We train and we'd fool around and we do some different stuff, but nothing was ever really serious. It wasn't ever sticking to a schedule or anything. And I think when I got a little bit older, right around the time I turned 12, I think my dad kind of was like, okay, he's ready to learn, you know, he's ready to commit to something. And we found jiu-jitsu. You know, we went to a jiu-jitsu gym there where I grew up, about 20 minutes away. It was a week before my 12th birthday. And then after that class, it just snowballed, you know. It just became, you know, training once or twice a week, training 3 times a week, traveling to train more, not doing anything else but just jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? So the passion was there, the love was there, I think, from the first day, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
When you say travel, you're from Canada, correct?
Yeah.
What part of Canada?
I'm from Windsor, so I'm right on the border of Detroit.
Oh, nice. Like Eminem, like, is it a nice place?
I mean,
have you seen 8 Mile? You know.
It ain't 8 Mile. That's in Detroit. But
I know, but it's the border of Detroit. So, I mean, Canada's got to have, you know.
Detroit is a nice city. It's just cold as shit, but it's a nice city. It's really nice. But I didn't go by 8 Mile.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Windsor's just Windsor's a typical town like where I live now in the United States is Midwest, you know, Midwest USA. Where I grew up in Canada is very similar. It's kind of a blue collar city, you know, middle class. You know, there's some bad areas, but, you know, majority of it's good. Big, but not too big, you know, just big enough that everybody could know your business and get in your shit, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, living where I live now is just like living in pretty much the same city. It might just be a little bit bigger. It's pretty much the same thing. So, yeah. My city's nice. It's easy to transition.
Nice. So what was jiu-jitsu like in Canada? Like, were there a lot of competitions? Were there a lot of gyms?
No. So once I started training more in jiu-jitsu, once I started to really get into it, I would travel to train in the States. So my dad and I would like get into the car 5 days a week, 6 days a week sometimes, and cross the border to train. It was
6 days a week to cross the border.
It was definitely a trip. It was definitely like hard, but where I lived was about 25 minutes to a half hour away from the border. across the border, and then the gym was there within, 5 to 8 minutes. So it wasn't, these hours and hours and hours, one way or anything like that. But it was definitely a lot harder than it was to stay like in your town or in your city or drive to the next town over, and train. If you wanted to take it to the next level, you kind of had to do something crazy like that or move, because you really didn't have a whole lot of jiu-jitsu where I was for sure, where I grew up. And even where I grew up in the county, you pretty much had to drive 25, 30 minutes just to train in Windsor or just to train somewhere around the city itself,
Yeah.
So who was your coach in the States?
So in the States, I trained with a few gyms that were under Hibero Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So I started under Hibero Jiu-Jitsu. I trained in Detroit. I also trained in Toledo. And then from there, I trained in the States from when I was about, I would say full-time, about 14 to when I was about 20 years old, just before I was 20. And then I ended up changing teams and coming out to a place in Toledo where I currently am and have been for the last 5 years.
When did you decide that you wanted to make this your profession? You said you started training, you said full-time at 14 or just?
Not just full. I was going to school and everything. Like I finished school. I attempted to go to college and failed miserably, but I never like quit everything else just to do jiu-jitsu. But I was training like 5 times a week, where it was kind of all I did outside of regular life was jiu-jitsu by 14.
Mm-hmm.
I had an idea that I wanted to do it forever for a long time, since I was young, probably 13, 14 years old. I just didn't have anything to present to people to say that I could do it until I won like my first major tournament. I won PANS as a juvenile blue belt, juvenile 1. And I was still 15, like on my 16th year, and I had a great performance there. So that was kind of something that I could use to say like, yeah, I can do this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm good. Look, this is what proves that I'm good, not just for myself, but to tell other people so people wouldn't think I was crazy, or to kind of my parents to see like, okay, yeah, he does definitely have a future. You know what I mean? So I'd say around 15, 16 was the time that I could just come out and fully say, like, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think everybody's trying to prove that they're not crazy and that jiu-jitsu is an okay thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. That's like a constant battle. You can be as good as you want, in the gym and win all these competitions, but people out there in public really don't care about what you won. They're probably not going to believe you anyway, no matter how decorated you are or anything. So you always have to have like something that you can like reassure yourself or reassure the people around you, like, yeah, I can do this. You know what I mean? Like that proves it, or this proves it.
So you made the decision. How was the transition to like the lower belts to black belt for you? Because I remember you were winning a lot at the lower belts, and like it's like growing pains at every belt, of course. But what was the transition like from purple, brown, and then to basically the professional, like the highest level, elite black belt? Can you talk to the people?
So I made a decision about like 2 months into my black belt that I was really going to stop caring. What I mean by that was I was really going to stop caring about like how good I was or what I was winning or whatever. I just wanted to fight and get experience. So I would fight all over the place. I would go to like tournaments all over, and I did this in brown belt too because I was preparing for the professional level. I probably have like 80 matches that I've had that aren't on BJJ Heroes because they were like random tournaments, like random submission only tournaments for $500 or $1,000 that were, God knows where, that I competed like, 2 or 3 of them a month sometimes. And
oh, wow.
Did like crazy stuff like this just to get experience because, I don't want to be here for a year. I don't want to be here for my ego. I want to be here for a long time. So I made the decision to take some time when I first got my black belt to kind of get my ass kicked if I had to and kind of come up short a few times, compete as much as I could, and not have an ego about it so I could learn and get to the position I'm in today. where I don't need experience and where I don't need to train more or to make these huge changes in my game. I bit the bullet already and I went through it all. So now I can start to build my career and build myself as a real professional athlete, you know?
Awesome. I think one of your best performances, and I watched all your matches from it, was the Nogi Worlds last year. Can you talk about that? I think that's when, like, for me, that's a big deal because, like, it's IBJJF, it's a world title, and it's really hard to do. Like, people, like, when I first got my black belt, I was like, I just assumed, oh yeah, I can win worlds. But then, like, you go through it and you're like, oh, it's really freaking hard. So can you
Yeah.
talk about that huge, monumentous achievement of winning a world title at black belt? Can you talk about that performance?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, you came around jiu-jitsu kind of like when I was too. I think you were always like one belt ahead of me back in the day. So, you know, IBJJF was everything back in the day. I mean, if you won a real IBJJF tournament, that was like what solidified you. Now there's a lot more events, associations, things that you can win and do rather than even compete in the IBJJF and make a name for yourself. You know, we're talking about all these professional events. So it was something, even though that I'm more into the no-gi scene and the submission only scene as far as like my activity in competitions, it was something I never forgot about, to be a black belt world champion, you know, at the adult level. And that was one of the original dreams, you know. So it was really special that I got to realize that last year. And definitely a tough weight class, you know, middleweight's always stacked, a lot of guys in there, you know, 4 or 5 fights to get to the gold. So it was definitely, and it was a challenge in itself. It's still jiu-jitsu, you know, it's a points tournament, so it has its own challenges. You have a lot of different things you have to deal with, and going from now predominantly doing single fights, you know, super fights or smaller bracket tournaments, going into kind of like what I used to do, into a big bracket where a lot of things can happen with 30 plus guys in it. It was definitely a different challenge because it wasn't like anything I really had competed in recently.
How
So
did you? Well, go ahead. Go ahead,
which
Nico.
style do you prefer? Do you prefer doing super fights? Do you prefer doing tournaments?
I think they're both unique in their own way. I do like the professional events. I'm not saying I don't like the tournaments, and I think the tournaments need to exist, especially when we're talking about worlds and ADCC and things like that. Yeah, there has to be tournaments, and you gotta put like your focus for your career on those kind of things. But I think these fights are great. I think it gives a great feeling, a great energy to the audience, especially when there are these submission only events where the guys are attacking. Similar to Gary and I think Gary and I's match can definitely bring new people to jiu-jitsu who would like to sign up and do it just by seeing that. And I don't think you get that kind of coverage, that kind of exposure, that kind of light on a match and on a performance such as ours in a tournament, you know, in a gymnasium somewhere, even in Worlds or Pans or anything like that. I think what the professional scene is doing for jiu-jitsu as a whole is extremely special. You know, I think it's long overdue.
Nice.
What advice would you give somebody that wants to become a professional grappler?
If you want to become a professional grappler, honestly, you got to give yourself a little bit of a talk. Like, are you really ready for this? You have to kind of communicate with yourself about it and be real about it, what it's going to be. I think just like anything, you know, you got to be real. You can't bullshit yourself. You can't look past anything. You know, you just got to be real. You got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror, you know, with no ego, and be real about it. Be real about your life, because it's not an extremely lucrative sport, especially in the beginning of it, you know, especially starting out. And it can seem like it's going to be that way for a really long time. So, you know, you got to make sure you really want to do it.
Yeah. So how do you like finance your lifestyle? Does it come from like a balance of teaching and sponsorship? Is it mainly from teaching?
Between all those things like teaching, sponsorship, competing, DVD sales, privates, all kinds of things like this. The goal through jiu-jitsu is to use your jiu-jitsu to develop a lot of sources of income. That way you can be relevant for a while. That way you can stay financed, and you can finance your life, and you can grow your life. I mean, you want to have long sustaining streams of income. You don't just want to be a competitor and increasing your pay for each fight, thinking that you're making money, because that shouldn't be your sole money maker. That shouldn't be your biggest money maker. There should be a lot of other factors, other things.
Brilliant. That makes sense.
Do you own the school, or are you just an instructor there?
I'm an instructor
Okay.
at a gym. Yep.
Do you plan on owning a school one day, or do you want to do something other than jiu-jitsu down the road?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to. I mean, other than jiu-jitsu, I don't know. I'm never going to know until I get a little bit older. I mean, right now, my life's just all jiu-jitsu right now. You know what I mean? I don't have anything else. I'm sure one day when I get older and the competitions kind of die down and the body starts breaking down, I think I'll want to do something else a little bit different, but I'm never going to be without jiu-jitsu. I know I'm not going to be training 2 and 3 times a day every day until I'm 50 years old. So I know this is like I have a small window here in my life where it's going to be all or nothing with jiu-jitsu, and then from there we'll see where life goes.
I was gonna ask you, like, do you do anything other than jiu-jitsu? It's like, because I talk to you all of the time, and I see you at like all of the tournaments, and I swear to God, you disappear. Like, as soon as you're done competing, you are ghost. Like, and I'm talking about like you will go from New York to Ohio in like 30. It's like your bracket just ended. Like,
yeah, so you always got like work to do. I always have classes to teach and work at the gym and back to training and things like that. I don't really do anything else besides jiu-jitsu in the gym, honestly.
I mean, Jamil doesn't either, but you still see like I don't know, because you see, like they're glued to a tournament. You like disappear.
I mean,
You pop
maybe
up right
Jamil
before
likes
you compete,
people.
and you disappear. You definitely are. And it's like, how long is the drive from Ohio to New York? Because I would at least want to be chilling there and not have to be in a car at least.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, it's not that I don't like people, but, I don't like hanging around tournaments too much. I don't like hanging around, like, events and stuff like that. It's cool to see everybody and, do your thing. But after the job's done, I mean, it's time to go home and work.
Study
I don't
film.
really like to, like, hang around and bum around. But the drive to Ohio, like, between Ohio and New York, is about 9 hours, honestly.
You do that all the time, too.
Yeah, so that's the thing I was talking about, like a brown belt and, early black belt was just about getting experience. So that's when the road warrior thing kind of came in, going to Chicago and back, going to New York and back on the weekend, Atlanta. One time I even drove out to like Minnesota for like, there's no tournaments in Minnesota. You know what I mean? I drove out to Minnesota back in like 2016 or 2015.
Oh my God.
I got back from Nogi Worlds in 2016 at brown belt and competed in a tournament in, Southern Ohio, 3 hours away, like the next weekend, 5 days after getting back from California. So like when it was that time, it was just about getting as many matches in, as much mat time and experience as I possibly could, It wasn't really about winning or losing or anything like that. So I definitely spread myself thin. I probably wasn't showing my best game in the tournament, but I wasn't there to just try and get people impressed about me or trying to get people to, love my jiu-jitsu or think I was cool. I was just kind of there to get experience and get better,
That makes sense.
I appreciate that, man, because I think now a lot of people are just want to protect some record, like they're going to be undefeated. Like at the end of the day, like you got to just go after where the smoke is,
Yeah, for sure.
You lose, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to lose. It's just grappling. Like, the way we compete, if you want to, like, when things clear up, I would love to, like, compete every weekend just to make up for the lost time. And chances are you're going to lose, but you're never going to be able to reach that high level unless you have trial and error.
Well, grappling, like what you said, we could literally fight every weekend. We don't get punched in the head. You know, if you lose a couple matches in a row in MMA and you get knocked out, like, your life could be over pretty much as you know it. You could be like, you could have serious closed head injuries. You might never fight again. You know, we lose 2 matches in a row, and who cares? We can go back the next weekend and fight. I've been to a million tournaments where I've lost like 2 and 3 matches in the tournament. So, I mean, it's completely different. There has to be a completely different mindset about your record. That's not something that should really come into play if you look at a guy and you see that he's like 60 and 40. I mean, it doesn't matter, man. Shit. It's just grappling, you know?
I mean, I think social media has a huge influence on how people feel. Everybody loves to post their podium pictures and have everything like perfect.
Yeah, no one really wants to post when they lose, you know? Usually the people who like to post when they lose just lose a lot, so they get kind of used to it, or they like to do it, you know? But at the high level, everybody's super competitive, so they're always going to post about their wins and everything. And I think people, like you said, they look at that and they only see that. It's like when they look at the fitness pages and they see the bodies on men and women, and they're like, oh, that's what it is. You know, that's not what it is. No one's going to show you something shitty, you know what I mean? You know, the guy who's out there doing it, who's keeping it real, I mean, that's not what people really want to see. People want to see everybody winning and everything being like golden, you know?
Very true. Very true.
Anything else to ask, Nico?
Yeah, I got one more question. So like when you like, I don't know if everybody like follows like Dante on like social media, but like, again, I'm not sure if you do anything other than jujitsu, but the jujitsu lift a lot of weight
Oh
and
my
eat
God.
a lot of meat. Like you eat a ton of meat. So like, do you have like a nutritionist, or is that just like Ohio GF team boy, like we're gonna bulk up kind of thing? Like
Are
what
you a
pushes you to
hunter?
do that?
So the lifting thing kind of just started as always being the smaller guy. So my dad got me into lifting when I was really young,
When
and
were
it's
you the
always something
smaller
that
guy?
it's
Man, you,
always something that I use. So I was always like a smaller guy in everything that I did, because I was always like a teenager, like just older than the kids classes. So I'd be in the adult class.
Okay.
So this is kind of probably why I have a good guard, and I kind of favor my guard in a lot of fights, is because I pretty much couldn't do shit to anybody else in the class because I was like a kid, you know, I was a young teenager. So it always had this thing that like I had to get stronger, I had to get bigger, you know. So that's kind of what it stemmed from. And then when you get older, you put your time into researching and kind of finding out what program works best for you. And I kind of did the same thing as far as my nutrition goes, you know. I don't eat as much steak as I used to. I used to try and eat steak like, you know, 3 and 4 times a week, and I don't do that anymore. It's expensive for one, and I didn't feel great eating that much red meat.
Oh, okay.
So I do eat a lot more chicken and fish, but I eat a lot of food. You know, I eat like 6 or 7 meals a day usually if everything's right. So it's just because I train a lot and I lift quite a bit. My lifting regimen's pretty intense, so I do need a lot of food no matter what, like cutting weight or gaining weight. I do need to eat quite a bit to just have the energy to keep going.
Oh my God. I would not want to have to feed you or finance feeding you.
Probably not. I don't want to have to finance feeding myself sometimes. It's scary.
Well, listen, Dante, it's been great speaking with you. Congratulations on all your success. I really look forward to your next match. Your matches are appointment viewing. I just really hope that jiu-jitsu blows up so that guys like you can have a platform, because you're like exciting. I really like your matches. Like, if that's the type of fighting I always say that's gonna make us superstars. I don't know who said this, but they said that they don't remember if you win or lose. They only remember how you fought. I think it was Leo Zinho.
It's true. I think that's a true statement, man. I mean, against Gary, it's a loss on my record, and a lot of aspects about it feel like a win from the outside, even though I myself know I took an L and know that, you know, I'm in the L column right now and I need to bounce back. A lot of the aspects of it, how the energy I'm receiving and the feedback I'm getting from all kinds of people, students, family, fans, people on the other side, you know, on Gary's team, is like, it's almost praised like I won. So it's definitely something. I think when you fight with this style and in these events now, I think we can come closer to the goal. And the goal is really to just attract people to the sport. This is a great sport. It's a beautiful martial art. And I think the more people we attract here, the more popular we can be, and a good life we can create for the next generation coming up.
Very true.
All right, Nico.
No, very well spoken. That's all I have. No more questions or anything like that. Thank you so much. Like, I have followed your career as somebody that doesn't study any film or know anything about studying film. Like, you've always been like you've always had high action fights, a lot of submissions.
Yeah.
So like, when I was learning to edit videos and make highlights, I always used to watch your fights and use your fights to make highlights. So I appreciate that. You made my life so easy.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Anything you want to plug before we go? Any instructionals you have out?
Yeah, so I have instructionals at BJJ Fanatics. I have the front headlock, guillotines. I have a back take series. I also have a guard series. These won't be like my three of my last DVDs. I'm definitely going to work to do more with them in the future. And if anybody wants to reach me on Instagram, I get tons of messages. I get a lot of messages about jiu-jitsu, but I think I get more about my lifting program and, you know, working out. So don't feel weird if you have questions about something that's not jiu-jitsu related. Please, you know, I'm easy to find on social media. Get on there, shoot me a message. You know, I communicate. I respond to everybody.
All right.
You can find me at Tim Spriggs BJJ on Instagram and Facebook, or at timspriggsbjj.com. Nico?
All right. Make sure to follow me at No New Nico on Instagram, and of course, Favela Jiu Jitsu.
This has been the BJJ Goons podcast. Peace out.